The way that can be spoken of is not the constant way. The name that can be named is not the constant name. The nameless was the beginning of heaven and earth. The named was the beginning, the named was the mother of the myriad creatures. The nameless was the beginning of heaven and earth. The named was the mother of the myriad creatures. The beginning and then stuff. It's kind of interesting that even in Genesis, even in Genesis is great Kabbalistic masterpiece. And early on, when Adam was formed in the fable and placed in the garden, one of the first jobs, if not the first job that he was told to do by God, was start naming stuff. He gave names to the animals. Okay, and every time he gave a name to an animal, he was reaffirming that the animal was something other than himself. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. I read from this particular translation of the Tao Te Ching. Okay, and it has been discarded. This particular one was discarded, I think, from the Newport Beach Library many years ago, back in the Constance. Both Constance and our son Jean-Paul worked at the Newport Beach Library, or a branch of it, the Mariners branch. And I believe they brought this home because it was eventually discarded because it's it's falling apart. And this is a 1978 edition. Okay. The reason I'm holding it up is because the 1963 edition of this very Penguin Classics, came into my hands at the time, probably 1965, late 1965, about the time I had an amazing initial psychedelic experience. Okay. Now, all of that probably sounds pretty obscure and everything else at first reading, and every translation of the Tao Te Ching is a little bit different and says things. But I'm just going to read just the first lines here and show you how weird it kind of sounds, just to demonstrate that it didn't sound weird to me. Okay. Huh?
I just came in from picking Tulsi tea.
Yes.
For my tea.
She picks Tulsi, holy basil every day.
The only thing I remember about the original book was that the prophet and maybe something else, and I think it was that we we spur of the moment wrote our because we had about an hour time to write our marriage ceremony with, didn't we?
Yes, we wrote,
because we weren't going to make any promises or vows or stuff like that. So I think we gave ourselves advice. We have no idea what we did then, though. The only thing I remember about the prophet was that it was about
standing in each other's shadow or something.
Two trees can't grow too close together or something. Well, that seems to work out.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm
But-
going back to doing
But yeah, we plucked our wedding anti-vows out of the Tao Te Ching, which is, but anyway, but we digress. It made sense to me. Okay, I may have still actually been frying. Probably walked home. I was living with my brother and his wife at the time, and that's where the book was. The way that can be spoken of is not the constant way. The name that can be named is not the constant name. The nameless was the beginning of heaven and earth. The named was the mother of the myriad creatures. Everything. Okay, there was nothing, but then there was everything. And the name was. Anyway, I digress. Hence, always rid yourself of desires in order to observe its secrets. But always allow yourself to have desires in order to observe the manifestations. These two are the same, but diverge in name as they issue forth. Being the same, they are called mysteries. Mystery upon mystery. The gateway to the manifold secrets. Okay, that was from Lao Tzu. And it really, as the years go by, it makes more and more simple sense. What I'm looking for something else here. Here we go. From a Kabbalistic point of view, we have the singularity. Okay. Now, in a sense, in Kabbalah, we've got three kinds of nothing, three kinds of nothing. There's a nothing that isn't even identifiable as nameless. But then there's Ein Sof, and Ein Sof, and it's almost like a nothingness that you can hint that it is the absolute absence of absolute everything, which brings in the idea of there's an everything to be absent from. Okay. But anyway, it's almost like the number 2 there on the right here is at least the first pre-echo of the named. And then everything else becomes stuff. And when it becomes stuff, you drag in the concept of either or, and you create duality in the world. Now, DuQuette wrote somewhere, do you have this book? Okay. The best little book no one's ever read. Okay. In the chapter, well, anyway, it's the Book of Ordinary Oracles, if you haven't got it. And it's one of the cutest little things that kind of ever squeezed out of my brain. I wanted to call this book Funny You Should Ask, because it's an oracle book. But just for the table of contents, this book is an oracle. Yeah, the book's an oracle because in the margins, okay, each margin has a little oracle in itself, so you can do bibliomancy. I guess it's this way. You can do bibliomancy with it. Keep your cool and maintain a low profile. That's the advice for that one. Anyway, this book is an oracle. I'm having to read it from here. No sense of humor, leave my tent. Why oracles work, the 7 secrets of fortune telling. The couch potato oracle, the oracle of Coween. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the oracle of Coween because it has everything to do with that duality thing I've just mentioned. Dice, dominoes, playing card, tarot, and solitaire oracle. How to be truthful to yourself when reading your own cards. And that includes the tarot of painful truth. New Year's Eve tarot, Mark Twain oracle, Shakespeare oracle, the pendulum, the I Ching. Many oracles, so little time. And the entire text of the I Ching of Milo. How much would you pay for a book like this? Don't answer. There's more. Back on that, this is the Oracle of Coween, which is a play on words for coin, okay? Let's see. Obviously, the most profound mathematically based oracle, and the text prior to this, this chapter talks about why oracles work. Oracles work because they're perfect. And when you look at perfection of anything, beauty, mathematics, balance, whatever, art, when you look at perfection, you're looking at an unobstructed display of truth. And when you match that with almost magical desire for an answer, the answer can be reflected in any perfect display. It's like you look at an absolutely perfect sunset on the beach, sun setting over Catalina, and all of a sudden, you realize the resolution to some issue that when you take a walk in the park, you work out. The park is so beautiful. You work out an issue. Oh, I took a walk and then I came back and decided, yes, I am going to not get into crypto. Okay, but anyway. Obviously, the most profound mathematically based oracle would spring from the inscrutable number 0, the nameless. I threw in the nameless there, just keeping with the theme of the morning here. Obviously, the most profound mathematically based oracle would spring from the inscrutable number 0. Unfortunately, 0 literally gives us nothing practical to work with. And the number 1, that like you feather on the tree of life, and the number 1, which expresses its perfection in eternal monotony, isn't much better. But things get very interesting when we come to the number 2. And I don't mean scotoscopy. If I have to translate that, that's the poop oracle. I think I made up that word. Trying to be funny. Remember, the original name of this book is Funny You Should Ask. Okay. The number 2 is the great-great-grandmother of all randomly generated figures and images. The most profoundly ordinary oracle, based on the number 2, is something you likely have in your pocket right at this very moment. The Oracle of Koween. And then I give an example of I give a little story about how I first encountered and experimented with Koween, and it's a goofy little story. But let's see. I've heard that the opposite of a truth is a falsehood. But the opposite of a great truth is another great truth. Near the top of my list of great truths is the one that simply states that something either is or it isn't. Let's face it, it doesn't matter what the odds are against me winning the California lottery. If I buy a ticket, I'm either going to win or lose. Above the abyss, okay, above the first three concepts represented by the first three Sephiroth of the Tree of Life. Above the abyss that Kabbalists tell us divide the actual universe from its ideal source. So in this case, the actual universe would be represented as 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And the ideal is 1, 2, and 3. But you knew that. I didn't have to tell you that. Okay. Above the abyss, which Kabbalists tell us divides the actual universe from its ideal source, broods an infinitely smooth environment of consciousness where all opposites are reconciled. There, in the transcendent playground of the Buddha and the Avatar, a thing is true only in so much as it contains within itself its own contradiction. But down here, in the brickyard of the phenomenal universe, things aren't so smooth. As a matter of fact, the whole shebang appears to be held together by the vibration caused by two very big bumps in the road. Bumps that cause every element of mind and matter to be splashed against the canvas of polarity. On, off, light, dark, I, you, up, down, in, out, right, left, front, back, high, low, yes, no. Now I'm going to show you those on, dash, off, light, dash, dark. Okay, that's important. It's a sad commentary, but most of humanity functions as if there were only two aspects to the polarity thing. Good dash evil, God dash devil, right dash wrong, laugh dash cry, sin dash virtue, life dash death, profit dash loss, pleasure dash pain, war dash peace, mercy dash cruelty. They ignore or refuse to examine the sublime secret hidden inside every hyphenated opposite. The secret of the hyphen itself. The mystery is easily revealed if we simply replace the hyphen with the words changing to. Now we have on changing to off, light changing to dark, up changing to down, good changing to evil, profit changing to loss, pleasure changing to pain, life changing to death, mercy changing to cruelty. And you could read them backwards too, because they're happening backwards simultaneously. It's part of the magic of the hyphen. This is the change in the Book of Changes, the I Ching, which is in the I Ching of Milo's in this whole back section right here. So, okay. Constantly plugging. I'm just shameless. This movement is the source, the wisdom, the intelligence underlying all divinatory systems, and it's manifest most perfectly in the Oracle of Koween. Well, it maybe not most perfectly, but most fundamentally, I would say. So, and I give an example. It's when you ask a question and someone says, I don't know, flip a coin. Okay, well, flip a coin. Okay. Now, a coin has two sides. Actually, a coin, you got a tails and you got a heads there. Okay. I guess George Washington was turned on his head. He's pretty depressed about how things are going. But it does have three sides. Or it has three, surfaces. And I suppose when you spin it, that probably makes noise. Okay. When you spin it, it's that hyphen. And I suppose if you could, under right circumstances, it could actually land on the edge, but most of the time it lands on one side or the other. Now, if you have a question and you flip a coin to get your answer, it'd be a yes/no answer, or a question that a yes/no can indicate your advice. It answers correctly 100% of the time. 100%. It never, ever, 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 ever fails. So why don't we just use it all the time? Because sometimes the environment that we're living in, the continuum that we are stuck in, which seems to have a polarity of a past and a future, and somehow we ignore the important part, the nowness that we're in. We're always thinking about the past that brought us here, and worried about the future and everything else. Oh, just give it a break for about just a microsecond. Appreciate your nowness, for Christ's sake. But because we're stuck in that constantly changing nowness, sometimes the universe is toggled in such a way that heads means yes. And sometimes it's toggled in the direction where heads means no. And the magic of the Oracle of Koween, whether your consultation will give you an accurate interpretation, is because the magic of the interpretation must lie in you. It's not that you're trying to interpret an answer, you're trying to interpret the moment. Gee, is this a heads moment or is this a tails moment? Okay. And so the oracular ball is back into your court. Now, that heads tails thing could be viewed like this, an unbroken line. Let's call that heads. And on the other side of the coin is a broken line, and that's tails. Okay. And that's the Oracle of Coin. Okay. Well, I guessed wrong. I guessed, sorry. Should we attack the village? Is it a good time? Will there be victory if we attack the village next door? And we go, oh, tails. That means they're receptive. They're open. They're weak. They're weak. Let's attack them. And you attack the village next door, and they beat the shit out of you. And you go, oh, I think we interpreted that wrong. I think maybe it meant that we didn't have the spear. We shouldn't have used cardboard spears or something. Okay, so the next time they said, okay, if there's two, let's use 2 coins, and if we get 2 of them like that, that means, oh, one of us is going to be obviously a weaker or receptive or something like that. And our own intuition says, I think maybe they've learned to use stone things. So I think maybe we have a stronger, more obvious answer. Okay. And they still beat the crap out of you. Okay. And then somebody said, look, let's just say 2 out of 3. That's good. 2 out of 3. Okay. Now, if one of them is like that, okay, oh, that will be weak, but in a sense, well, this would be like yes, no, but this would be maybe. And if it was maybe for us, because we're answering the question, or if it's there, maybe it could go either way. Or maybe if it was down there, it's no. 2 out of 3 it gives you a little more information. That gives you 8 trigrams. Okay, there's 8 different kinds of ways to look at that. And so the I Ching, first and foremost, just looked at the obvious. Well, what kind of image does that form? And it gives more. It turns into an art form of let's see. I'm trying to do this backward. This looks like lips and a broken tooth or something like that. You know, it forms an image that brings to mind it suggests other oracular answers and things like that. So that is. Oh, and then they double those. There's 8 trigrams, but then they double trigrams to make a more complex image of 6 either broken or unbroken lines, and that gives you 64 different kinds of answers with those hexagrams. And Kabbalists would go, oh my God, 64, that's the square of 8, which is so the oracle itself. Oh, it's so cool, you know. In the new book, you knew I was going to get to this because, of course, you know, I'm understandably anxious that any book that I write sells a little bit. You don't really, you don't get rich writing occult books. Okay, I got to do a million other things. I don't pay the rent with the books, but I like them to sell. I like people to read them. Okay. Uh, and I would like a little of satisfaction before I shuffle off this mortal coil and say, oh, a few people read my book. Anyway, The Tarot Architect. And let's see, I start right off with the fairy tale that is that first section, in a sense, of that Tao Te Ching about, and I call it the wrong of the beginning. And where is, let's see here, hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Talk amongst yourselves. Okay, here we go. The Tree of Life. This is the first working tool, so I have to talk a little bit about the Tree of Life. How 10 kinds of everything came out of nothing. How the named and the myriad creatures came out of nothing. How 10 kinds of everything came out of nothing, because the great God, what it is, started thinking about itself. A fairy tale for babes and sucklings. Before there was time, God, whom we'll call the great what it is, brooded blissfully alone in the boundless sea of absolute absoluteness. And I've got a snoozing number 1 there. Very cute. Because the great what it is was so absolutely singular, it had no need to be aware of the condition of its own self-existence. Why bother? After all, in order for the great what it is to even begin speculating about itself, it first need to arouse itself from the state of seamless singularity and create some kind of internal reflection to ponder. Such an audacious disturbance would radically unsettle its smooth condition of singularity and create an artificial second state, one that would accommodate 2 ideas. 1, a knower, and 2, something for the knower to know. For reasons the wisest sages dare not speculate, great what it is persisted in its desire to know itself. It voluntarily shattered its infinite smoothness and projected upon the center of itself its own reflection, thereby begetting a second condition. Voila! Great what it is became self-aware. Number 2 was born. The wrong of the beginning. Oh, that's what I am. Great what it is shouted, and for the first time heard the echo of its own voice and realized the presence of a that along with its I am. Melancholy Kabbalists call this moment the fall, or the wrong of the beginning. The named was the mother of the myriad creatures. And that's it for today. Tomorrow will be Saturday morning cartoons. Once again, I shamelessly say The Tarot Architect from the good folks at Wiser Books. It's available you can get it in Kindle too. Okay. But there's so many illustrations and things like that. If you have the opportunity to just as easily get the paperback, because you'll want to fondle it, things like that. Okay, until tomorrow, in Saturday morning cartoons, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. Oh, P.S. Because the named is so important, I know many of us in the magical community give ourselves different magic names and things like that. But when you think about it, you can't change in a way the moment that you were born. Okay, because remember, astrologers always like to know the exact moment you were born and the exact location. Well, just as you can't change the moment you were born, whatever you were first called, whatever the deity of your parentage was that conspired to give you a name, if you're going to start playing around with Kabbalistic revelations with gematria or Tamura or Natarikon or whatever the games Kabbalists play with letters and numbers and stuff, start with the name you were born with. Play around with it. Squeeze it. Rub it. Put it under a microscope. Examine that as one of your primary Kabbalistic investigations. It might surprise you. Even if it's a name that you hated, remember, it's the name that first named you. That first you being named was your wrong of the beginning. It might be good to try to get a better insight on that. Anyway, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will. See you tomorrow.